and we're going to talk about what... Hi, this is Gabriel from Sprache, and today I'm with my friend and polyglot Luca Lampariello, who speaks 14 languages, and we are going to talk about what polyglots do differently to learn a language successfully. And in this video, we're going to talk about the mindset of a polyglot, and in the other part of this video that is on Luca's channel, link is in the description, we're going to talk about the techniques. So let's get started. We have 5 points prepared, and point number 1 is polyglots have a reason why they learn that language. Polyglots, when they're learning a language, they always have a clear reason why they're doing it. They know what they need that language for. They see themselves using it in very specific situations, because motivation comes and goes. It's just normal for everybody. And enthusiasm is high at the beginning, but the longer you learn a language, the more usually the motivation drops, the enthusiasm drops, because it always takes longer than you expect. And that reason why you're learning it, visualizing you speaking in the future that language with your friends, with your family, while traveling, is what drives you forward, is what motivates you for a long time to really get to fluency. So what do you think about that, Luca?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Gabriel, and I think you used a very interesting word, which is visualizing. I use this visualization technique all the time. I've actually figured out by looking back in the past that I've been doing this spontaneously and automatically, but then I recommend it to everyone wanting to learn a language. So here's the deal, and here's my piece of advice. When it comes to learning a language, be absolutely sure that you do want to learn this language, because language learning is a marathon. It takes a long time. It's a huge investment, and the road can be bumpy sometimes. So at the beginning, as Gabriel was saying, pointing out correctly, is that you start with a lot of enthusiasm, but this enthusiasm tapers off with time. You always have a motivation dip, no matter what you do, it will happen. And at that specific time, what really makes a difference is that if you're really sure. And here's what I recommend to my students. Take 30 minutes of your time, and in silence, take a piece of paper, a pen, and jot down, imagine yourself speaking the language, being a fluent speaker in the language in a very concrete situation within very concrete circumstances, and keep that little story. It doesn't have to be a book. You just can write a very short and descriptive, realistic, simple story and keep it next to you every time you sit down and learn. This is what I've been doing for years, spontaneously, automatically, and unconsciously. Every time I sit down, I had this idea in my head. I'm going to be speaking this language. I'm sure this is going to happen. I'm sure this is going to change my life. And it did. And not only did it change my life, but it actually helped me focus and keep learning when the road got bumpy, because even for a language buff like me or like Gabriel, things can get tough and can get difficult. And they will, and you better be prepared.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because sometimes you might have a very good reason, but you forget it down the road. A few months later, you're already not sure about it. I've had languages that I didn't learn to success because my reason wasn't strong enough. And I know you have the same. You were telling me about Romanian. For me, it was Ukrainian. And you just learn from these experiences that even if you know exactly how to learn a language, if that reason why you're learning it is not strong enough, then you, even if it's the easiest language for you, it's really tough to get to the point where you want it to be.
It's like having a Ferrari and not having fuel, or having a little bit of fuel and then
that's a really good example.
You know.
Yeah, and that brings us to the second point, which is polyglots know how to motivate themselves. And you just brought up a very good point about an example about writing down the motivation. And polyglots, they know that those motivation dips, they happen, and they just think about what to do with those motivation dips. And there are several things that you can do if your motivation wears off. As long as you have your clear reason why, you can book a trip to that country, you can search for people in your city that speak that language, you can organize meetups, you can find series in that language, you can find books, and polyglots, they just have a big arsenal of things they can do to boost that motivation in times where motivation might not be as high, or even they might pause for a week or for two to regain that energy. And it's just important to know that motivation won't always be high, even though at the beginning it's usually super high. and they just know how they get through those dips and how they get back to the time where they're motivated and where they just can carry on with all their power.
I think you touched upon fantastic points. I think one of the things I do, and I also recommend it to my students, is that when motivation starts waning or tapering off, whatever you want to call it, it's important to create some sort of hooks, to create some sort of event that you're looking forward to. For example, when I love Greek, so truth be told, my motivation has never really tapered off, but booking a flight and a trip to Greece reignited my desire to do even better, to do even more, because I know now that I have a flight to Greece, I know that I will be using Greek in Greece, and I will be experiencing speaking, communicating with people. That's what makes me tick personally. For other people, it might be reading a book, it might be watching a movie, something that they can do with the comfort of their own place. But for me, traveling, meeting people is really what makes a difference, is really what fuels my desire to speak a language, because at the end of the day, it's about speaking, it's about living, it's about breathing, it's about eating with other people. And one more thing that I wanted to say is that this creates some sort of expectations for the future, so it's great. But in the here and now, in the everyday routine, what I do is that I do not rely on motivation because it ebbs and flows. As they say, I rely more on reducing the friction of getting started my language learning session. Because the truth is, we tell ourselves, I don't have time, I don't have energy. But if you build a system that works for you, then you don't have to you don't have to think about motivation. You don't have to think whether you wake up in the morning and say, I don't feel like doing this. You just do it because it's there. Just for example, what I mean by reducing the friction, there's a couple of things you can do. You can plan your session beforehand. For example, you can learn at a certain time of the day. Then you know exactly for how long you're going to learn, and maybe you already prepared what you're going to be learning beforehand, maybe in the weekend. This is what I do all the time, so that, you know, when I wake up, oh, it's 9 o'clock, between 9 and 10, I'm gonna be learning Greek, and I know exactly what to do. So on the one hand, it's creating expectations for the future, visualizing yourself and saying, okay, I'm going to be speaking this language because I'm gonna be in Greece or in Armenia or in Norway, whatever language whatever language you're learning. And the second thing is to design a system that works for you, and instead of relying on motivation, you rely more on a starting ritual. Remove the friction of getting started. Do something simple. Drink a glass of water and get started at a specific amount of, at a specific time of the day for a specific amount of time, doing something that you already know exactly, you already know exactly what to do.
Yeah, and I totally get that example with going to Greece. It's actually, we're here in Warsaw right now, and just before that trip, my motivation to get my Polish up to speed, it just skyrocketed. And it's always the same way for me. Before the opportunity to use my language skills, my motivation just goes really high.
The thing is that we are both Europeans. So if you guys, for example, are watching us from the United States or from Australia, from Brazil or other places, it's true that in Europe it's easy to travel around, and within a couple of hours you find yourself in another reality. It might be a little bit more difficult for you guys, but the truth is that there are ample opportunities to speak your target language wherever you are. So if you can't make it to Greece because you live in Australia and it's not easy, it's not exactly around the corner, what you can do, I'm pretty sure there's a Greek community in the place you're at. Find people to talk to, because at the end of the day, you got excited because you know that in Poland you're going to be speaking Polish with Polish people. So you might as well get excited if you know that you're going to some part of Germany or some other part of the country you live in, and you're going to be speaking the language. So create those circumstances, because they do make a big difference for your motivation.
Okay, so we just talked about reducing friction, and this is what brings me to the third point, which is that polyglots include languages in their life. It's not just one slot that gets 1 or 2 slots that you have during the week where you go to class or do homework, but the language gets integrated into your life. To do it like that is you reduce the friction. You don't think about, okay, so today I need to learn a language, so what do I need to do? And I need to get my notes out, I need to plan my session and everything. But you just make it a normal part of your life. And that means you listen to a podcast in that language that you're learning, and you already prepare that. You just do that every day, the same podcast. You don't need to think about it. It needs to become second nature for you. It's like you get up in the morning and you brush your teeth. You don't even think about that. And the same thing needs to be true for language learning. It's just normal that you listen to a podcast in the morning, or when you're on the way to work, in the car or in the train, and you watch Netflix and you watch series that you like, and it's just normal that you always watch the ones in the foreign language that you're learning. Or you go to a meeting once a week with native speakers, you just speak to them. So it becomes part of your life. You immerse yourself into that language. You live parts of your life in that language. You have regular meetups with teachers or with tandem partners, and you don't need to think about what to do. You create a strategy and you stick to it, and it becomes second nature to you. And it's not like you have 1 or 2 slots a week where you have your class and that's where you do language, and then you forget about it completely until you have the next class or until you have to do the homework. Learning a language is not like learning juggling, where you can learn the basics in a few hours, or some really easy skill where it's enough to do it once a week. But learning a language takes time and takes effort, and that's why it's just not enough to just do it once or twice a week. You need to do it every day. So what do you think?
I think, Gabriel, that you're right, as always. So one thing that I would add to everything that you just said, because what you said just hits the nail on the head, it's true, is the fact that what I personally do is, for example, to connect a language learning activity, which is not deliberately sitting down, getting the notes out and deliberately learning, but I connect my language learning activity with something I do every day. Just to give you an example. When I do some workout in the morning, I work out, then I take a shower, and I always listen to a podcast in Polish while I take a shower. For example, when I don't have to wash my hair, I can use my AirPods. I know exactly what to do. I know, when to do it, and I don't have to make any effort, because I know that listening to Polish is connected with taking a shower at a specific time in a specific place. And I've been building these habits across a wide range of languages. For example, I watch French news, or the news in French or in Russian while cooking and then having lunch, or watching Netflix in Russian or other languages at night. So I have built a number of habits that allow me to practice languages every day, and I highly, highly recommend that you do the same, because in the long run, it can make things much easier for you and much more exciting. As I always say, and as Gabriel pointed out, make it happen every day. That's the secret. Make it happen every day for a long period of time.
And you save a lot of time, of course. If you connect language learning with an activity that you do anyways, then you don't have to make any extra space for that language. And I really hope that your AirPods don't break in the shower. That's the first. I've never heard that one before.
They're still there. They're still functioning. One last thing I wanted to say is that replace some activities you like doing in your native language and do it in your target language. For example, one thing that really made a difference when it comes to learning French was that I started replacing all the movies I watched in Italian. I started doing that in French. So every night I was just plowing through and watching a show in French on French TV with French subtitles for a year, and then my French skyrocketed in just a few months because of that.
Yeah, and this actually moves perfectly into the fourth point, which is that polyglots are in charge of their routine. They're in charge of their learning progress. They don't have somebody else telling them what to do. They're not dependent on a teacher giving them homework, but they decide exactly what they do. And that's a very important point, because you know best what works for you, and you can test out a lot of things, and you can experiment and listen to podcasts and see if that works for you. If it's fun, language learning always has to be fun. And as a language learner that wants to achieve success, it's very important that you dictate what you do, that you're in charge of the learning process, that you are in charge of your own success. Nobody else is. You are deciding what you're doing every day. We gave you a lot of examples today, even showering with AirPods, which I might try out even myself. But you decide what you do, and you don't rely on somebody else. So a polyglot just decides their own path in language learning. They decide what they do every day and they stick to it, and that's what eventually brings that success. Your take, Luca.
Well, in my case, and in the case of a lot of polyglots, I personally know that has made a huge difference, meaning that polyglots are self-learners. They decide what to do, they take initiative. Mind you, taking initiative has a lot of consequences. Just to give an example, with my students, when we have coaching sessions, because I'm a language coach, I tell them, look, if you want to talk to, for example, a teacher, a tandem, you want to talk to a native speaker who will help you speak the language better, it's paramount that upfront, from the very beginning, you tell them exactly what you want. And the reason why this at the beginning sounded obvious to me, but it's not that obvious. One student, for example, told me, Luca, I don't like my teacher because she tells me to do all the time grammar stuff, like, oh, today we do grammar drills, or we read out loud. And I told my student, well, if a teacher with whom you're supposed to speak tells you to read a text out loud or to do grammar drills, then it's a big no-no, because you have to decide what you want to do. We come from years of language school and language schooling where we're used to thinking that the teacher is right, the teacher knows best, and we are passive. Well, I always say take initiative, just build a checklist of things that you want to do and tell upfront very clearly your expectations about what what your language lesson is going to be about. And I would recommend that a speaking session, if you're talking to someone, you better talk, speak as much as you can, make mistakes, and tell your tutor, please, I would like you to give me feedback in this precise way, so that you just practice the language, you talk about stuff you like, and you get feedback about the stuff you like. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and that's a very important point. It's most language teachers or most tandem partners will have their own routine of doing things, and those will not fit to your routine. So either you find a teacher or a tandem partner or a learning partner that does things the way they work for you, or you have to change for another person. And it's just, as sad as it is, it's normal that you have to try out different teachers. The teachers that fit best to what you want to achieve, that's the teachers that you have to work with. And if you feel already resistance to going to class with a teacher, then it obviously means that that's not the right teacher for you. And it's normal that not every teacher will fit. And what you have to do is you have to try out somebody else. So you dictate the way you learn, and everybody that helps you with that has to make sure to do it on your terms, because you're the one who wants to learn a language and you're the one who is in charge of being successful to get to fluency in that language. Which brings us to the fifth point, which is that polyglots, they don't doubt. They know what they're doing works because they've done it with other languages already. So they stick to it, they stick to the plan, they stick to what they came up with, and they know that they can achieve success. Because many language learners, especially if they learn their first language, they're not sure if they will be successful or not. And as soon as the first problem appears, they think that I don't have a talent or I can't learn languages. But that's not true. Everybody can learn a language. And as a polyglot, you've experienced the success with other languages, and you know that you can get to the point where you want to be if you invest the time and the energy. So it's really important that if you learn a language, that you don't doubt that you can do it, that you invest the time, that you set up the system that brings you success. And we're going to continue with very concrete techniques in a minute. So that's really important if you want to be successful with a language, is that at no point you can doubt that you're not capable of doing this. You are capable. Everybody is capable of learning a second foreign language or a second language.
Speaking about doubting about yourself, doubting about your skills to learn anything, it reminds me of when at the ripe age of 6, I tried to ride a bike for the first time. And I remember that I came back home in tears because I thought I'm never gonna be able to ride a bike. That was the first time that I was trying something. And so when I talk to people, when I talk to my students, or when I see people online leaving comments on YouTube or in other places saying, am I sure that I'm going to learn a language, I understand you and I feel the pain in a way, because until you've done something, you're not sure. It's like me wanting to learn to play the guitar, wanting to ride a bike at the age of 6. When you still haven't accomplished something, especially when it comes to learning a skill, you do doubt. It's normal. But we're telling you for our perspective that when you doubt, the thing you have to do is to double down on work, because that's what is definitely going to get you there. It's to do something for a long time. It reminds me of a beautiful metaphor that Professor Arguelles, he's a very famous polyglot, used to say. He said, you know, I am a polyglot, a person who speaks many languages, and I have experience. He was talking about this. I've been to the peak of the mountain. And once you've been to the peak, you reach the peak of one mountain and then another one and then another one, and you will find yourself at the base of the mountain again, the 18th mountain that you have to climb. I have no doubt, because I've been there before and I know how to reach the mountain and know how it feels to be at the peak of the mountain. So I'll leave you with this beautiful metaphor by Professor Arguelles. But again, when it comes to climbing, it is a little bit like a hill or a mountain, but focus step by step and don't think too much and all the time about when you're going to reach the peak, because it's going to happen if you put one step after the other for a long period of time.
And to reach that mountain, you have to have the right tools, you have to have the right skills. And that's actually what we will continue talking about, which are the techniques that polyglots use to get their languages to fluency. And we're going to continue on Luca's channel, so click the image that just appeared on screen or the link in the description and find out about 5 techniques of polyglots that get them to success.